Alliance, and patriotism. Now, these are not just random words that I picked out of nowhere. These are actually from the Nigerian Constitution, Chapter 2, Section 23, that speaks about the ethics of Nigeria as a nation. Now, how many people here really believe that Nigeria lives by those ethics? Nobody, right? Why is that? Why is it that we've come this far from what we initially started from? Well, there are many people that we can obviously blame for that. I don't think it does us any merit to go into that. Instead, we can talk about what is the way forward. When you look at Lagos today, you see that we're a nation, I call us a nation, a state of 20 million people. A larger population than Sweden and Norway combined. And as of today, we have a larger GDP as a state than Rwanda, the Republic of Benin, and Cameroon all combined. But yet, look at the condition of the roads, look at the state of security, look at just the general state of Lagos as a whole. You understand that there's something definitely wrong. As of today, Lagos has a deficit of about 3 million homes. Now that's a big problem for us politicians, but for you business people, obviously that's an opportunity. Now politics shapes everything in any society, and that's why we need to identify and elect people who are committed and people who embody the values that I spoke about earlier. So I'm going to some of our main policies. I'll just touch upon 4 of them. Now one, we can all agree that there's a scarcity of land in Lagos, and that's why the prices keep going up. Now, if we have this scarcity of land, what is the next logical thing we can do? We can build higher. That's what all major cities do. So the first thing we will do upon getting into office is review some of the current laws regarding the construction of multi-story buildings in residential areas, in the hopes that that will alleviate some of the suffering that we're seeing right now. Now, this will be done in conjunction with a commitment to the enforcement of construction regulations, because we've all heard about the collapse of several buildings in this state. Thirdly, we will start a public-private partnership, which I believe the current government has already started. But what we will do is, rather than trying to seek out new homes, we will approach communities in key areas and look to partner with them by taking over that land and constructing high-rises, wherein the private institutions that partner with us take a percentage of the houses that are built, the government takes a percentage, and the former indigenous of that area, the landowners, take a percentage as well. And what we then do with that extra houses that we have, we put them back on the market at a mortgage or at affordable rates. Furthermore, we're going to expand the Lagos Homes project that's currently going on and look to provide more houses at affordable rates, single-digit interest rates for mortgages. Now, we do that in conjunction with banks, we do that in conjunction with cooperatives. These are things that are being done today, but most of us don't know about them because the system is rotten. Lagos Homes as it is, if it's not empty, it has been dashed to somebody's brother or somebody's sister in government. We need to change that. And the only way you're going to get change is by picking the right people. And finally, the last thing we will do is we will construct all 5 lines of the Lagos Rail project that has been hanging for the past almost 20 years. Now, when we do that, we create access to lands in areas that the land is very cheap, right? And by doing that, we incentivize private individuals to go there and develop estates so that we can build a more stable state. So those are just the 4 policies that I will be discussing today. I believe we have a panel discussion which I can go into more, but I'll leave you with this. Every great empire, shall we say, or every fiefdom, let's call it, at one point seemed undefeatable. And right now it might seem far-fetched that anybody would defeat the powers that be in Lagos State. They will fall at some point. The question is, what side will you be on when that happens?
With a shared vision. We're going to execute this project, and this is how it's going to help. For me, it's going to help the society, and for you, it's going to earn you a bit of money. Now the problem we have in Nigeria is there's no shared vision, because the people we have in office, they don't really care about what helps, the general public, so to speak. And oftentimes what public-private partnership then boils down to is me imposing, or politicians imposing upon private individuals undue, demands for funds that clearly, the private enterprise cannot come up with, nor is it profitable for them, to spend, $5 million on sorting somebody out. So that is one of the key things that we can eliminate right from the start. We can put an end to that kind of practice, because if you know a bit about Mr. Gbadebo, you understand that he's an MIT trained architect. Now he didn't come to Nigeria in search of bliss or personal wealth, because when you leave MIT, you have people rushing you left, right, center, big companies. So if it was somebody who was committed to making money or improving his lot in life, then he really doesn't have to go to public service. He doesn't have to scrap with these fellows just to make money. So you can see in him a person who is driven by idealism, who is driven by values, and all of that are things that we're going to bring into the environment to change that space and at least take this country, take this state towards where it needs to be. Responsible for the housing deficit. One is the unavailability of funds, because that demand, but the demand side is not strong, because when the average person is earning 40,000-50,000 a month, how can they ever buy a house, right? So we need to discuss we need to resolve the issue of mortgages being available for the common man. Furthermore, we need to look at sourcing materials locally. Now, anybody that is importing tiles now knows how things have changed. Anybody that's importing any construction materials, of which many of our materials that we use are actually imported, you understand that because of the change in the valuation of the currency, it really disrupts the market and it drives up the prices of these houses, further pushing more and more people who need homes out of the housing market. So this is another area that we look into, taking advantage of the Lekki free trade zone. We will incentivize entrepreneurs to start the local construction of some of these materials to ensure that we can reduce the cost of construction. And again, we go back to public-private partnership in a way that's mutually beneficial. And then finally, I firmly believe that once we have a good road network, a good rail network, it will open up more land.
In developing a website that people can search, and they're switching from the analog or the old physical system verification to online. But now it's costing us more money. Because of that, they have increased the cost of getting a lot of documentation, governance consequences, and what happens? Because people complain about affiliating homes. At the end of the day, I will pass that cost on to the buyer, because you cannot do anything. So all those different, even right now, and they will give an excuse, but I know because of the election, but they will increase even to get your assessment, your tax assessment, everything has gone up. Get your building approval, everything has increased by more than 40% in some instances. Right now, I'm telling you something based on. So my first question about that is, what is your charisma? What is your party's plan about? Because if you want to reduce the cost of housing or the price of housing, you need to reduce the cost. Those administrative costs that have no place to go about to money. That's another thing. Before we will buy land now, and sometimes you don't even know if you are buying from the right person, because if you go to a family on it, maybe you only make the ballet signs for you, but maybe you don't know that in that community, the people that in ballet doesn't have the power to sell the land to you. So maybe the ballet and the secretary has to sign, something like that. So that's about the information about how all those administrative costs, what are people going to do about these costs? Because as you mentioned, when all these costs pile up, it makes the house more expensive. On top of that, there's not enough house built. So there's public housing deficits. And then when it comes to the luxury side, there's a high cost of living. And trust me, everybody wants to be able to buy the kind of house we just can't afford it.
On Friday, a lot of people are paying attention these days, which is interesting. But in regards to the administrative cost, one of the things we will do is review those costs. And part of the reason I believe that those costs are so high is because there are elements that view the public purse as a personal spending, as a personal wallet, and so they feel free to just increase and do whatever they feel is necessary. So we would review those costs and see how best, what works best, because in some cases you do have to have high costs because you're trying to try to change the certain sectors. Now, you can do that for a time until you at least develop the technology, and then it's easier. You can then slash the prices because the manpower costs. So I can imagine if you're going from an analog system to a digital system, you would need at least a lot of temporary workers to input all of that data that will drive up costs for that particular ministry. But I see no reason why the state itself cannot bear that cost. And at least spread it over a longer time rather than pushing that into people themselves. And that's in regards to the cost. And then the information gap. Like I said, I believe that if we get the local governments to be more involved with these kings and these obas and try and create some kind of structure, it would be very hard to speculate from far what that structure would look like. You would need to go in there and try and see what works best. I think that would enable us to create some kind of clarity on the ownership of these lands. Even though these people are not applying for any CFO, we can even evaluate the possibility of finding out some form of recognition of ownership, for these plots, using the local governments, using the local kings and others.